chill, 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 chill. VFX and Chill. Chill, 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 chill. VFX and Chill. Chill.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a this time functioning episode of VFX and Chill. I'm Hashi, and over there somewhere is Seth.
It's me.
Seth, how are you doing?
I'm really good. And you know what I'm really happy about is that finally all three of us are on the show today.
Michael!
Together again, finally.
It's so wonderful to have all of us here on VFX and Chill. We love to talk about the latest and greatest in visual effects technology and are always trying to push into new VFX territories and talk about, all of the types of territories that visual effects encompass in our industry. And we thought that, I didn't have a pun planned out for this, so I'm only using the word that I have. But we have some very amazing guests on the show today. Shall we reveal them now?
We shall reveal them. They are our friends at Territory Studio. They are, please welcome, I did not check your last names before we started the show. So, Ashton Hertz, Russ, how's your last name pronounced?
Gautier,
I was going to be right. And Marty Romances, right? That's beautiful. Right. Welcome. These are our friends from Territory Studio. If you're not familiar with Territory, you absolutely are familiar with Territory. Their work is everywhere, and it's fantastic. And we've actually worked with them in the past on a couple Red Giant things as well. But for now, how are you guys?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Happy Friday.
I understand that you've brought some show and tell for us, and so we want to just dive straight into that.
That sounds exciting. So mini intro. We're gonna. Well, I'll let them introduce their own work. It's really cool. So.
Take it away, guys.
Look at this. They got the thing.
Yeah, props to Zach. Zach Freeman did this beautiful background for us. One of our 3D designers. Ashton?
I'm Ashton. Great pronunciation on the last name. Thank you for that. I'm executive producer working in Territory here in London, and on lots of exciting film and screen graphic stuff. And then my colleagues in San Francisco.
Oh yes, I'm Russ Gautier. I'm creative director at the San Francisco studio for Territory.
My name is Marty Romances, and I'm co-founder here at Territory San Francisco. Nice to meet you.
I am so excited to talk about the stuff that you brought to show us today. This it was starting with something I'm familiar with, and what I'm most familiar with about you guys' work, which is your incredible work on feature film and TV. Largely, a lot of people know your work from the Marvel movies. So tell us more about this. Tell about your work on Ant-Man, Quantumania.
Yeah. So Ant-Man, where do we start? So this one was a cool one. We were working with art department and, in between art department and in post for a lot of this project. We did 250 shots, some on set, a lot in post, obviously, because the quantum realm does not exist, as far as I'm aware. And yeah, it was a really cool project, lots of kind of making up what does the world look like in the quantum realm, and what does King's alphabet look like, and how do we get that across? So got some few different bits in here from the different sets. Small, lots of Sorry.
Such pretty work.
It really is.
It is pretty. I can't take credit for that. I just, but it's very pretty stuff.
The thing that I'm always marveling at, Michael, why are Hashi and I the only two that have made puns so far on the show today? And you've not?
You've got a drop for these kind of jokes, right? Well, I wouldn't want to use the drop because we're
playing
looking at all this lovely stuff.
We are. The thing that I am constantly amazed at is how we've seen so much FUI across the past 10 years in movies and TV, and you guys are consistently finding ways to make it fresh and unique and new and specific to the project, and I don't understand how. I feel like everything has to have been done, but then you guys come on our show and you show the stuff off, and it's like, okay, well, you did it again. Next time you're doomed because there's nothing left to do, right?
I mean, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. It's like, when Marvel comes to you after Avengers and all the rest of them, and they're like, okay, so Ant-Man, you're aware of him. What if he was in the quantum realm? And also, there's an alphabet made up. In art department, we don't know what any of the letters means. We're just made up some symbols. Can you assign a language to it? And we're like, okay, give us a minute. But
Dash is like, no problem, Russ.
Well, a lot of this was like, semiotics and kind of making people a lot, when it's something like Ant-Man and quantum mechanics in the quantum realm, it's a lot of how can we make something that is unimaginable into reality, and using all those symbols into making something that your average Ant-Man fan can actually understand the point we're trying to get across. So yeah,
I think when we've been being asked that many times, and that one of the tricks is like start from scratch in every project. Lots of people we got the questions like oh, you must have these libraries, It was like no. We really enjoy doing this. We really enjoy the opportunity of films and games allow us to flex our creative muscle every single time. We're forced to do it because every director is really precious about what they're creating. And I remember at the beginning of doing this type of work when I was still in the London office, where we originally started the company, and we were working with James Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy was our second Marvel project at that time. And he was the first thing that we presented, and after he saw our work in the Winter Soldier, we did things that were not really from another galaxy, and he said, if I understand this, you're not listening to the dream. This is from another galaxy. I don't need to understand anything that's happening in the spaceship. So these guys,
I love
that. At that point, not even us, we knew what Guardians of the Galaxy were. Like now, of course, after 3 movies and many, appearances in the Marvel universe, we all are familiar with it. But I think it comes to, for us, it's like the playground. Like film industry allows us to do a bit of whatever we want. And the interesting part is that sometimes by doing things that we not necessarily need to, we understand as humans. We find happy accidents on some graphics that then influence what we're going to be doing for a car project or for another. And I think that's why we like that every film is different. Every film feels fresh, and the directors really like that because they're baby and they want their baby to be dressed with the fresh new color no one is wearing before. That's
exactly. And as a coming from a design background, it's kind of the most fun design exercise because the purpose of the screen graphics isn't just to look pretty. Sometimes it's to look pretty, of course, but we're telling a story. There's a clear function behind all of these things, but they also have to have a really unique flavor to them. They have to feel like they belong in that world, and that's where we get to really have a lot of fun. Is it's a bit of storytelling, it's a lot of graphic design, it's a lot of play and experimentation, and that's where you get new fresh takes on screen graphics, on holograms, on all of the things that like you said, like you feel like it's all been done before, and then we come up with something new because we're always playing and experimenting and building on what we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think, that's the thing with, there's so many TV shows and or films and everything where you'll have a bank of extras and they're all doing so many different things with their hands. And it's like, okay, cool. We have to make kind of as many things as possible that still make sense with the story. And it's like how, kind of that creative problem solving for technology that doesn't exist, but you still want it to feel tangible.
I mean, it's such a good point because there are, I mean, like even going back to something like Star Wars, like if you think of the like little graphic to show like when is this planet in range of the Death Star's weapon, it becomes a huge ticking clock element in so many of these movies to visually understand something that is not otherwise being communicated, that you need to be able to read in these tiny fast action shots, like what is happening and what danger is the ship in, what danger are the characters in, and how do we know that from a very quick glance?
Yeah, show, don't tell, right?
Yeah.
It just makes it much more interesting, and you can communicate so much more with a screen graphic or with a hologram than you can, having somebody explain it to you, over a 5-minute monologue or whatever.
It's a universal.
They do say.
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that people, the saying is a picture's worth 1,000 words, and we are making 24 pictures per second happening. So the amount of language you're speaking in.
It's a universal language that everyone needs to understand, no matter how difficult this looks. Everyone in the cinema needs to understand it. And when you work with Ridley Scott or with Denis Villeneuve, and these guys will do a 5-hour cut if they could, but they can't. So instead of having two of the most expensive actors and actresses in the world talking for 5 minutes and how they go from A to B, if we can flash this graphic that shows an A, a B, and a line that's moving, everyone will get it. And that's the point. And that's where we did find an opportunity as storytellers and as graphic designers to kind of insert ourselves into that corner of the market that maybe at that point, when we started 13 years ago, maybe no one was looking at it with the intention and detail that we started looking at it.
It's very cool. I kind of like took the reins on the keynote, but I don't know if you had specifics you wanted to talk about with each slide.
No, I mean, they're just, it's one of those things that they're just nice to look at.
They really are. Like,
I could just stare at this one all day.
I kind of just want to make them the background for our show.
I can't quite resolve what
so,
what is happening to make everything happen, but it all makes sense.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think so. This one was part of a hand scanner to let one of the characters out of jail. But again, because it's like English, quantum, alphabet, that is all symbols and stuff. It's like, how can we make this really obvious but still look cool and not just a hand?
Well, and the distortion you have on it adds this organic flavor to it that feels like it's not completely tech. It's also, it feels liquid in a way. That's what makes it so hypnotic to me.
They have that inversion moment kind of where that piece slides around. Is very cool.
This one's really cool.
Yeah. I love that one.
Let's see what else. This one too. This has the.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So this part was This one was quite difficult because it was Michelle Pfeiffer, wonderful actress. She does crazy hand movements, and the whole point of the scene was that there was, we have to take quantum energy to rebuild a portal to take them back to San Francisco, the house that they're living in. And so it's, a lot of moving this around, and we're changing an alphabet and things, things are changing. You can see things are changing, but it's obviously a language that doesn't exist and technology that doesn't exist. And it's, thinking of smart ways to make that understandable.
Now, this is always a fun chicken and egg situation. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, Nick Smith in the chat is asking, as far as figuring things out goes, Nick says, I'm sure every project is different, but generally speaking, what percentage of each project is spent just trying to find the look?
Oh, yeah. How much is look dev?
Yeah, the good thing about it is that we have, when we work with our department, because we're bringing things, as we're building the set, there's a lot of cross-referencing with the teams in this art department. It's not just us. You have lots of concept designers. You have lots of prop designers. Things that are being 3D printed to create a certain set. And I think this is where we sometimes influence. Like I remember when we were working in Winter Soldier, we did this screen with the scepter from Loki with 2 rings that were scanning that device. And all of a sudden, someone from our department saw that and say, "We're going to build this. This is great. This is how we're going to have the scepter floating there." And so I think, like, we of course start from referencing things that are not UI references, because otherwise we just refrying the same concepts. We look at undersea creatures for different gradients and to set color tones. We look at architecture sometimes to see how an architecture formation could just give us some lines for a potential menu on the side. I think the important part here, at least for us, is that we're trying to look at references that not necessarily come and are influenced from technology. We're trying to bring it from somewhere else. And as I said, we force ourselves, because it's difficult to do it every single time, especially for 13 years. And we force ourselves to start from the beginning with a fresh take. No looking back at that mood board that we did for Avengers Endgame when we're looking, and right, like we're starting from scratch with a new take. And it's difficult sometimes because some of these characters, like when we started designing for Iron Man, some of these characters, what we've done is evolve the technology with the different films, and depending on where they are in the Marvel Universe time frame. So sometimes we definitely look back as okay, this is 10 years after Iron Man had evolved thanks to this technology that was brought from another planet. So yes, there is that, but that's because it's part of the story and you have to do it, right?
The thing, I think I've joked about this on the show before, but the thing that it's the smallest thing, but to me, it's what separates good FUI from amateur FUI, and it's literally just line width, stroke width. I don't understand. You guys, it feels like you guys get it down to where it's just barely visible, and then you crank it just another percentage lower, and yet we can still see everything and make out everything. But when I do that, I render out just invisible garbage that is not even visible.
It's kind of an experiment in density, right? It's kind of like working with particles in the same way where, you can really easily go too far and not quite understand why it doesn't look right. But a lot of that is just down to density and just, again, kind of the basics of kind of the rudiments of graphic design, where you're building contrast, right? You're deciding really where you want the eye to go, where the meat of the story to be told is, where the most interesting visual is, and that's where you're kind of building your density. But you don't want everything else to feel empty, so it's really kind of striking that fine balance to build that contrast. And back to the original question that the chat had asked, the look dev, that's a lot of the stuff that we build out in look dev and really focus on is, where are we drawing the eye? What's the story we're telling? Because it's so easy to just wash it with all kinds of cool looking stuff, but then you lose the point. You lose that kind of meat of what you're trying to get across to the guy sitting in the back of the theater who's only half paying attention, right?
Yeah.
Some rules as well apply. We try to use 3 different line widths and 3 different font sizes. We don't go in to have 7 different font sizes or so. And
that's smart.
We like to do it in a way that the ratio mathematically makes sense. All the point to also thinking, and sometimes I got that question, is that 1 pixel line can become a half a pixel line if you reduce the opacity by half. When you start adding things together, different composite modes play a big time importance on this, and how some edge could get a bit of a highlight is only because that line there is a very thin line that maybe is at the 50% opacity, but it's in additive mode. So it's kind of playing with those tricks when you start getting the spectrum of density, which is extremely important for things like this. And as Russ mentioned, at the end of the day, what we need to make sure is that the story is told, not that the design is beautiful. And that helps us being able to focus the audience where we want to.
I think that was a really good point that you were making earlier, talking about how your focus isn't on making things pretty. Your focus is on telling the story. And I think that's another thing that separates a good UI or FUI and bad is like you're focusing on telling a story, not just making flashy whiz-bang things.
So I have a question that is kind of leading and probably may not have an answer, doesn't have to, but I look at these comps and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed by them. My computer is melting as I look at them. And so like I'm curious if any of you guys have any, or either as a studio or as individual artists have go-to tricks for simplification of these kind of really complex shots and how to keep your computers from melting down.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. I can take at least what I always say when I do workshops with people, like in festivals and whatnot, is sometimes, and most of the times actually, we're not rendering everything from 3D. We're not having it. What we do is we render a lot of tools, a lot of options, a lot of passes, and that's also because sometimes when we're working for on-set delivery, if you are there on set and they are loading the screens and all of a sudden the director at the time that we are shooting says, wait, what is this highlight yellow? It needs to be red, like, because if something needs to be changed, we cannot go back to Cinema or Houdini and start rendering that very complex render and say everyone, hey, stop the shoot, we're going to have to need 3 hours or 4 hours to render this. Instead, we have all of the passes separate, all of the masks separate in After Effects in a way that we can quickly change things, tint that in red, and have everything is sort of a pre-rendered at that point. It's very different on when you look at post-production, right? But some of those things that we were showing, especially when there is 3D involved and the amount of different passes, outlines, wireframes, different densities of point clouds that we generate with the hair render and other tricks, masks that allow us to then mask that point cloud in that specific point. All of these is prepared to be fast and to not melt your computer, especially when you are on set delivering this with the team. And I have to say that it's a very different story when you are rendering for post and then there's a new compositor ingesting all of the passes. At that point, it is.
I didn't realize you were doing that much on-set delivery. Like, how common is that now?
So, I mean, for Ant-Man alone, we did 14 different sets, I think. So all the screen that you were just looking at before with the little that was an on-set screen. So yeah, it's like Marty was saying, it's exactly that. Like we, anything pre-rendered as much as possible. And then, a lot of these playback companies, all their screens are only HD. So it's like, it has to be as light as humanly possible for when director says, I want to change. Yeah. Like you said, I want to change every font to every, I want something totally different on the day. But yeah, I mean, it's in a post-COVID world, it's a bit of, it's kind of a bit all over the place, but as much as we can do in art departments, the better, because then we kind of have a view into post and kind of keeping that language and that storytelling journey all the same throughout.
Yeah, everything we can do on set, we do, because the director of photography can get the lens, can get the defocus, and things that a green screen will never give you. Whatever we have to do in post is because it's physically not possible, as much as we can, again. And as we were saying, like, it happens so often that we design something in a portrait mode, and all of a sudden that screen goes landscape mode.
The social media nightmare.
We're not gonna flip that. So in a way, the designs are very modular, and we have this. As we started to design screens, each widget that you see here, we can have it in a master Illustrator file in case we need to put together quickly a landscape mode version of these, which will have the hero render, and we can move things around rather than have everything pre-baked and not modular enough.
Okay, very silly, granular question. When you're doing on-set playback, how is that playing back? Is it just a QuickTime file on loop? What is like?
A lot of places, it depends. It depends on the size of the screen, to be honest. So a lot of them are MP4s, which is It's crazy. Looping renders. Sometimes we'll do things that are, have actor interaction, so it'll be timed loops for bigger screens. Sometimes it's on a media server, so those are like HAP files for those giant screens. We had some of them on a show called Night Flyers, but yeah, for the most part you're looking at
I'm going to do something that wasn't prepared here. We didn't plan this, okay, and sorry about that, but could I share my screen, because
Please
I think
do.
this is interesting. Okay. So, I'm sorry, I promise that this wasn't planned.
Oh, don't worry. People tuning into the show don't ever expect anything planned.
Okay, I'm gonna start sharing. Let me know if you get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's coming.
yeah. Okay. Cool. So this is kind of what we do on set, right? And we start with this. Our department is sending us this, like what they're planning to print and do. Then we start thinking on which type of screens we're gonna add. And how we're going to see the cuts on each screen to create more than one screen with one iPad or with one, some of those are interactive. So we start talking with the director. This is with the Quinjet in Avengers. And so we need to be very accurate on like where the fuel gauge will be, and all that is discussed with the art department while they are building these amazing things.
Oh, I love that.
And then we're designing all of these, and then it's there. And you will imagine, wow, this is going to look so great on the camera. I mean, I can't wait to see it in the cinema. And then what you get is this, where you cannot really see anything.
Yeah.
But
I did not even know that happened.
You're like an actor who's like, I feel like I'm in this shot, and then you get there and your ear is visible in one shot.
So these are all like little mini iPad screen, like iPads.
Yeah, is that one feed going to all those screens, or is that multiple feeds?
This is like different feeds, one for each screen.
Okay.
But there are screens that look more than one screen. It's just that the frame on top feels like, and I'm going to show you something that's even more crazy. And I love showing this because lots of people don't know about it. But screens like this, this was for Infinity War when the Guardians have the new spaceship. So screens like those, are you ready? These ones, yeah?
Yeah.
Those ones are iPads and iPhones. So we have all of these sometimes interactive units, but then wait, look where they go. They go into these amazing frames that our department has been 3D printing. And then they all slot in there. We can wirelessly change the graphics if we want. And that's how you get these guys here, right?
Oh, that's
so cool.
So
now you said interactive. Does that mean they're just on a timed loop, or do you actually program them to be able to be tappable? And
some of them are.
That's great.
Yeah, but these little ones were in every single door in the Milano, the first Guardians of the Galaxy spaceship. You can see the iPhone in here. You can see the button. And those are little things that just are dressing up the set. Okay.
Oh my God.
They all
I
have
was not
dynamic
aware
islands.
this was a thing. I truly would have thought if I suggested it, I would be laughed out of the room. They'd be like, we just get some people in post.
Well, I mean, this is so cool because you don't have to do a lot of post. You don't have to do a lot of post VFX work to rotoscope out actors,
unless they just decide to change it all in post anyway, which I assume happens a lot. But what I'm marveling at is that this doesn't
like the actors have something to look at and to
Exactly.
it just makes it feel more like they're in a cool thing.
It's also
so cool.
It's so many
I really
things
had
that could
no
go wrong
idea
on
something
set,
like
though,
that was
right?
done.
Like, I feel like it's so many things that could go wrong. It's like so many extra things that could go wrong on set. So like, I guess I don't have a question there. I just stress that as a director looking at it, like thinking
like the low power mode button comes up and you're like, no.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that interjection. I didn't want to do, but
No, this was incredible.
Marty, apologize for
favorite
nothing.
thing that I've learned about we always talk about how fantastically enhanced all of big blockbuster Hollywood productions could be if pre-production was given a fair shake, and this is a much higher degree than I would have given credit to these huge studios for doing.
It's so cool.
are interactive. I have to say, for Bullet Train or some of the most recent films, we have created a system that allows us to feed from wirelessly, feed lots of iPads. The technology is helping us a lot, but also we have Unity developers that help us do certain things. And I'm going to touch at the end of the presentation. I have something else prepared on showing how we as Territory were evolving these on-set graphics into something very, very special. So let's continue with the show. We go back to on-set graphics.
That was so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Marty. That's really neat.
So the next chapter of this presentation, if we're good to move on, is there anything else you want to talk about Ant-Man before we move on?
We do need to mention at least a little bit that we did a VFX and Chill episode on Quantumania and some of the VFX.
Well, they don't need to know about that.
No, they don't.
The link is in the chat if you want to see Seth and Hashi floating around in little robot suits as giant heads. It's fantastic.
It's definitely worth Territory's time.
It's definitely a thing.
No, I'm still in our chat. This is for our audience in the YouTube chats.
This is beautiful work, guys. I just want to say that before we move on. It's hypnotic. So
that
now
one in
we're moving to a
particular,
chapter.
I'm going to interrupt your smooth transition. Was that the taking inspiration from organic and like life forms is such a great concept. I remember some article about. I believe that it was like the Tokyo subway system. Someone made a replica of it with little LED lights to grow like slime on, and the way that the organic like little bacteria spread to connect all the lights together ended up showing them efficiencies that they hadn't come up with.
Yeah, that's super cool with the oats and like. So this is very important. I don't know if you might seen our graphics for Blade Runner, and the knee was very, very, very like adamant on us understanding that for a film like that in that world, electricity comes from protein. So we had to start thinking different ways to design this and to get this more gritty analog feel. So we started looking at mold and how fruit and different patterns. So to the point that we sliced fruit, scanned the fruit, and we put this fruit into these comps as in the vignettes, just to get that very, very organic feel that was connecting the analog, the protein electricity.
So cool.
I love that. God,
Really,
you
really
guys got to
cool.
come back and do a whole episode on Blade Runner.
Or just slicing fruit, like whatever. Like whatever.
If we just do a cooking show that's Blade Runner themed. So this next chapter, I know very little about. I actually intentionally did not dig into this because I want to hear what this is. I want to hear you guys talk about this. Talk about the Echo 3.
Yeah, Echo 3. So this was an Apple TV Plus show that came out sort of late last year. And it's kind of like a paramilitary thriller show. There's a woman named Amber who's an American scientist in Colombia. She's researching psychedelics for treatment of addiction, and she's kidnapped by militants in Colombia. Her brother and her husband both happen to be, as you do. Her brother and husband both happen to be Delta Force operators, and so they, jump to duty and get a team together to go and rescue Amber from these Colombian militants. So it's a show directed by a guy named Mark Bowl, who he wrote and produced both Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 and a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh,
and
excellent. This feel good.
So
Zero Dark 30 was our second.
Good family comedies.
Yeah, exactly. Great stuff. Really fantastic to work with him and his team on this. So they had brought us on to do a bunch of kind of post-screen graphics, mostly around episode 9, which was kind of the climax of the show. It's really that point where, spoiler alert, the Delta Force guys go in and rescue Amber. And that whole episode is basically just that moment. And so we had started with drone design and HUDs and all kinds of stuff, which we'll get into in a second. But it really was kind of rooted in sort of modern military aesthetic. And it was kind of a fascinating exploration for us, because it was it ended up being kind of an exercise in restraint in a lot of ways, which we'll get into. But we can start with the drones. So the drones themselves were a big part of the story, and particularly this moment in episode 9 where like the drones are kind of hovering above this compound. So the drone design themselves, we had dug into kind of first thing, and the mandate from the creative team and Mark was to create something that doesn't feel like you could just go and pick it up off the shelf at Best Buy. Make something that feels like, bespoke, that feels military, that feels super high tech. And so we had started with those sort of earlier frames that you saw, these kind of like big drones, right? We didn't quite know what the scale was going to be. We knew that there were going to be some little drones as well. So we started building out some of these big drones. We'd kind of landed on this sort of ornithopter style, like motivation for the flight, but you can see like we had played with like a couple sort of like little helicopter things, but we all really dug the sort of flappy wing design. This was ultimately where it ended up. This was the final drone design. And these things, they're probably like 5 inches, like they're very small little drones. Here we've built out like a whole like kind of hard case for them and everything for them to fit in. And this next sequence up here, this is actual final comp shots. So these are the shots that were in the show where you see the little ornithopter taking off, and then here's some kind of process work, sort of behind the scenes stuff as we were working on that. And then these are, again, kind of final comp shots. So these were actually shot in Colombia. They had actually had real drones flying through here. So the dog's reaction and everything was to the real drones.
Oh, nice.
And then, of course, we painted them out and put in our drones. Here they are kind of coming back with reconnaissance data to the team that's, planning the operation. The drones were kind of a major part of that story. And so, building that out for us was really important to kind of understand just what it was that we were working with and what we were designing for, because the next step, of course, was, to get into HUDs and screen visualization and all of that stuff. So because we're dealing with drones, because we're dealing with, aerial vehicles, our mind immediately goes to like fighter jet HUDs. So we, go like way off the deep end into like fighter jet HUD territory. And that's where a lot of these things came in. And you'll notice the plate in the background is also treated, which I'll touch on here in a minute. But just for the HUDs themselves, we had gone like full on like fighter jet HUD crazy. And we had done several rounds of this before we had realized like we were kind of going too complicated. And so this is ultimately where we ended up right here.
Oh, wow.
Very subdued, very kind of dialed back, and ultimately something that feels like a real feed from a drone like today. So if you go back to the previous slide, this is actually a movie we can play really quick so you can see it. You can see it move. So even down to like the way that like the little vehicle tracker kind of drags
I love
behind
that.
the vehicle.
The way it updates.
Little segmentation.
Yeah, like it's
so
not perfect. It's not exact. It's like a little rough around the edges because it's real-time tracking. Here we're scanning this vehicle where there's two heat signatures in the vehicle, right? So we had tons of these shots with HUD. 120 shots or something where like, we were animating like the heading and all of these little details. And then you can see
it because it looks like
Yeah.
a camera autofocus interface, Like,
Yeah.
It looks like yeah.
It's very kind of real. It doesn't feel like it's coming from, 100 years in the future. It feels like something that you could see today. There's a shot in there of a control surface as well. They had this like iPad device that basically had the same kind of design to it, but it had these sort of like thumb sticks that like in theory you could control. So this is a shot. This is another shot of like just that control surface. So you can kind of see how they react to the shot making sure that like the heading is tracking appropriately, but then also like our throttle and pitch and yaw and roll controls are feeling like they're linked to the camera nicely. This was a really important point for us to sell these shots. We didn't want this stuff to just be flying around, in meaningless ways. We really wanted this to feel real, and we wanted it to feel like it was actually being controlled. And so developing a system around that was really important for us. Of course, we could have gone in and hand animated it, right? That was sort of plan B. If we couldn't figure out a good way to do it, there's always plan B, which is sort of brute forcing it. But we did ultimately come up with like a little pipeline that I'd love to show you guys a little bit about how that worked and how it came together, because this was an important component for us. So I can go ahead and share.
How many shots would you say were needed to feature this kind of interactive drone vision with components that are actually responding to the footage?
Yeah, good question. Quite a few. So I don't recall exactly how many shots it was. It was in the realm of 100 shots or so. And of course, there was a lot of back and forth, and everything needs to be really adjustable. And kind of like what Marty said earlier about being able to react quickly to feedback. When feedback comes in for an element that you're 50 shots deep on, you got to be able to go back and not just revise that one shot, but also the previous 49 shots that all have the same issue.
Do you feel like productions give you a good enough sense up front about how scalable your graphic will need to be, or do you feel like you just sort of know once you realize, like, internally, they have like 20 shots that need this? I think we've got to build this more interactive than they're.
We always try and plan for flexibility regardless, whether or not they come in with a really firm, like, we know exactly what we want. They don't. They're going to get to a point where, like, later down the line in edit, they've decided, something that happened in episode 3 is now going to impact your graphics in episode 7. And things are going to change. And we just have to be really adaptable and able to react quickly. And so we always plan for flexibility. The other thing is, like, they'll add shots. We'll start with 60 shots on our plate, and by the time we're done, we'll have done 130 shots because,
it's a testament to your good work and
their poor planning. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
It's all a creative process, right? Like, it's revision and revision and revision until you get to that point where it's either you're out of time for revisions or it's time to call it done and move on. So the way that we built this is the After Effects project for our control surface. And I'm showing this primarily because it's a little bit more involved than just the regular HUD shot, because we have the control surfaces, of course. So the way that we ended up executing this, we wanted to have like a really procedural method for driving all of these sliders and everything so that we don't have to hand animate every single one if we don't have to. So what we would do is we would start by tracking the shot and getting like an actual like 3D camera.
I was hoping that's where you were going with this.
I knew it.
I'm so happy.
Yeah. So that would start. So the one that I have here is just some crap that I made in Cinema. But, like, if this were our camera path, and we have our camera kind of sliding along. This is our track here. What we ended up doing was taking that track into After Effects, and we built a whole series of expressions to drive every single one of these little things, right? So our heading here is pulling from the transform data off of camera 1. And then we always have some like kind of scale controls built into that, right? So we've got like the raw data coming in, but we also want to be able to say, like, well, I don't want to start at a heading of 0. That doesn't feel particularly realistic. I want to start at a heading of 96 or whatever it is, right? So having a little bit of of control and scalability is important. So
This is my love language, by
I
the
was
way.
literally thinking the
This
same
is
thing, Michael.
so
It's like this is the kind of thing. It's like the measure 40 times, cut 30 times, like deal of
Yeah.
you'd like you spend. I'm going to spend 5 days building this rig that's going to do everything I need it to do, and whether we even use it shot to shot or not, this is more fun than going in and hand animating things from the start. It's so cool.
And that's exactly it. It's all about trying to keep that consistency and trying to let our artists focus on being artists and not, having to keyframe every little thing and then go back and forth on whether or not it feels right. So this was me just like bringing in this thing from cinema that I built. This is the actual data from that. All of these are just driven by expressions, but you'll notice that I have 2 cameras in here, and that's because when it comes to the control surfaces in particular, we wanted it to feel, kind of like a regular drone control would, where it's not locked necessarily to say the rotation of the drone. It's control, so I can pull it back, or I can push it forward, or rotate it left and right, but that stick is always going to go back to 0 if I'm not applying any input to it. And so in order to get that kind of like second layer of information, we needed to have the ability to compare where our keyframe is now versus where my keyframe is going to be in a frame from now. So I can do a little math between the two. So all that is just, it's literally, you can see I just duplicated the camera and slid it 1 keyframe into the future.
I love
and
that.
that's
brilliant.
And so all it is just doing that math. So that's what controls our kind of roll, pitch, and yaw here. So like if there's no input, even if the camera is like, pitched in a really weird way or rolled really weird or whatever, this stick here on the right will always be 0 until that starts to change and it starts to register the difference between the keyframes. That's what our kind of pitch, roll, and yaw are doing over here.
So on our show, whenever somebody goes and does something extremely impressive, we tell them congratulations, they are a Pixar. And we've rarely given it to a guest, but today, congratulations. This is my favorite thing.
You have achieved the intersection of storytelling, design, and effective visual communication is really what...
Well, thank you. I feel honored.
For those on the show, you may have heard hints in the past that I have worked for the military. I used to work for a special operations unit in the U.S. military doing 3D animation, 2D animation, blah, 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 blah. And I will say, for the benefit of the chat, that drones that small are in use in the field. And a lot of the design that Territory has done for these screens looks real similar to stuff I've seen in my previous job. So point one. Point two, I built one of my most proud moments in motion design was I took flight recorded data from an airframe of unspecified design and translated it into Cinema 4D and had to build a bunch of espresso stuff to make this 3D aircraft follow the path of the real world aircraft. And it's this kind of stuff is just, it's my favorite. It's my favorite.
I actually forgot to show you guys the simple rig that we had for our vehicle outline, because this actually is kind of directly relevant to some things that will come up here in a little bit. So our vehicle outline here is actually done entirely in After Effects. It's a purely a 2D effect based on a roto. So what we ended up doing was, we take our roto. This was just as we're kind of developing, back to our kind of look dev conversation. This is how the look dev for this particular element came about. So starting with a vehicle roto, we would roto the vehicle for the duration of the shot. And then we have our effects stack here for building out that particular moment, right? So we're using just vanilla After Effects stuff like Minimax, and there's a mosaic layer in there using, crunching the levels. I'll just go through the effects.
Speaking Hashi's language now.
This is my favorite.
So Minimax, just to like grow the bounds so that it doesn't fit exactly around the truck.
Smart.
Mosaic was just to get the kind of like hard edge, right? Because I'll show you what it looks like without Mosaic here in just a second. Crunch the levels to make sure that all of everything is, you know, either white or black, and then find edges to get those, you know, just the edges of the thing. Perfect. But if we skip the Mosaic layer, it's you know, kind of close to this, you know, close to the actual shape of the truck, but it's much more interesting to have it be this kind of like raw data feeling of like real time tracking of this sort of shape. And you'll see later, you know, when we get into the episode 9 stuff, how important it was to, you know, to keep things a little on the loose side in that sense. But that's how the vehicle outline was created as well. All in
Super cool. I love it. My favorite stuff ever.
And then image processing and threat detection. This again was based on some like really cutting edge sort of military technology that was, you know, released to the public a few years ago, where, you know, it's sort of this evolution of night vision where it's also doing a lot of object tracking, and it goes so far as to actually detect whether or not somebody has a weapon or somebody is a potential threat versus a civilian. So we're starting to differentiate between those things, which for episode 9, you know, we're storming this compound. There's loads of civilians, but there's also loads of bad guys. Really important to kind of make that distinction, and then to communicate to the audience, of course, you know, to be able to show the audience, like, here's the good guys, here's the bad guys, here's the civilian. So we started playing a lot with image processing. We're looking at, you know, like sort of a FLIR style vision. We're looking this here. This is our little montage, and it shows this kind of like threat detection mechanic where it's sort of scanning through these things. You can see we've got these like really
cool slicing happening.
Yeah, like some aggressive outlines happening. Here you're starting to see like, all right, here's all our bad guys. You know, we've got all our bad guys in red, of course. We've got moments where we see some civilians, they'll show up white, and we've got our good guys in blue.
Is this geometry that you're working with, or is this footage that you're
This is
affecting?
all footage.
So are you doing like depth maps? What are you doing to make this stuff happen?
Roto.
What? Okay.
Tons of roto. And the conversations that we had with our roto partner were completely insane, as you can imagine. You know, the first few passes we would get back would have everybody as blobs, right? Because they're like, oh, you want us to roto the people? Maybe you're removing them from the shot, or maybe, you know, we need to comp them slightly different. So we're just,
it was that Kylo Ren GIF exchange.
Yeah, when like one person starts in front of another, you got a bunch of people, like they're all kind of a blob. And we're like, no. We need every single person individually rotoed. Yeah. And they're like, I don't understand what that means.
They're like, we're going to need to re-quote this for you.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, complete insanity. So yes, all based on that same exact After Effects project I just showed, you know, same idea, just tons and tons and tons of roto. Every single individual person got rotoed out. It was crazy.
That's a lot of work.
I love the drones flying across in front of it. That's so believable.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, getting those drones in that shot was really important. Anyway, that's what we have for Echo 3.
Well, this is a testament to how authentic these graphics looked, and that when you guys sent this keynote ahead of time, Hashi and I looked through it real quick, and we got to the Echo 3 part, and neither of us are familiar with that show. So we assumed you were showing us work you did for the military. Like we thought this was spec
for, like,
work that you did.
And design some.
We're not able to show that. We wouldn't be able to show it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I feel the the little red dot like on my head from the trees, you know, for just even thinking about the idea.
It's funny you say that. We actually worked on a project, a French film called A Wolf's Call, and it's a French submarine film. And we actually had French submariners behind us the entire time and being like, this is actually what it looks like on the French submarines. So it's,
Wow.
it's a good test of it.
And you're like, French mariners, do you have to have your guns out and pointed at me while I work? Or
I assume that
doing
a
the
French
march.
submarine, like a British tank, has a kettle for making tea. I assume a French submarine has a pâtissier on it somewhere.
Yeah, the baguette holders.
good. Hey, Marty, sorry, you were saying something, Marty?
I was saying when we were doing The Martian with Ridley, and I was still, when we started in London, and I was waking up at 6 a.m. to talk with the Mars rover director because Ridley really wanted to be very accurate to what, if an engineer from JPL or NASA was going to the cinema. So I think it goes to say that sometimes we do need to be very real to the technology that's being used, working with Mile 22 and some other very militaristic focus or the Mission Impossibles that we've done. These directors really want us to, they connect us with NASA, JPL, or sometimes, militaristic operations commanders and whatnot.
I'm so glad you brought up The Martian. I was going to bring it up earlier when you were talking about on-set playback and graphics, because I remember seeing The Martian, and then I either emailed you or Sam afterward and was like, that's some of my favorite UI I've seen and stuff in a long time, because it felt so authentic compared to the NASA graphics we were all used to, and even the color palettes of it. I loved the work on that movie.
Yeah, it was. I think it was great to get their input. And when we're talking with them, we were asking, why don't you apply some of the design in there? And it's like, no, here's all about function. And we have technology that comes from 10 years ago, other technology we created 10 days ago, and they look completely different. That's why you see what you see when they have these launches, unless it's a SpaceX, of course, that they did it all from scratch and new. But there's no design language. There is all a big mess. And once we applied our layer of design on top of that big mess, there was almost like a pendulum effect where NASA then, after seeing what we've done for The Martian, came back to us and say, okay, maybe there's some value on keeping things organized in a design system, just to, again, be able to pick up things earlier and tell a story.
I love that.
That's so cool.
Before we move on to the next project, there's a question in the chat. You've mentioned using Cinema 4D. Do you use any Magic Bullet, Trapcode, any other Red Giant tools in your work at all?
Absolutely, all the time. Yeah, for sure. We have the whole
like
whole
Trapcode, the
suite.
company. You guys have even created Trapcode imagery for our Trapcode launches before too.
Yeah.
I answered your question for you. Sorry.
But anyway, Ryan in the chat, yes, they use lots of Trapcode.
Usually, in like Trapcode product launches, if you go back and look through our hero videos, you'll see Territory Studio.
Whichever was the one that made you go, ooh.
Yeah, if there's one that you're impressed by and it doesn't have Territory's name at the bottom, it's still Territory. Who did it? Up next, we have this graphic. I'm going to shut up, let you guys talk.
I think, going back to what we just seen, Ashton presenting the crazy world of Ant-Man, but then also Russ presenting work that sometimes is not from another galaxy and is more grounded. And we were talking about The Martian and everything. I think it goes without saying, something I want to just dive deep very quickly. It goes without saying that we're not the regular visual effects company. We can do CGI, we can do, but I always say we are a company with 5 studios, over 200 people, doing something that's very different to what these other companies do, like the ILMs, MPCs of the world. Because we're not recreating, we're creating. We're creating something that does not exist most of the time. So we're creating something that needs to be imagined, needs to be designed. And I think design and creation is our main differentiator, but also always having that technology aspect. The technology aspect meaning that we are inventing technology for the quantum realm or for the next drones of the future. And we're using technology and developing our own technology sometimes to get there. And we're using technology that we're all very familiar with, right? Like the software and hardware as well. And it's all put together just to tell a story, no matter if it's a story for the cinema audience, for the film or the TV show, no matter if it's a story for a game that needs to tell a story for the cinematic, no matter if it's story for a car that needs to tell you that now it's driving by itself at 100 miles per hour in the freeway, right? And that you're reassured. We're a company that's very different in that sense. We all know, I always put that example, we all know how a car in the middle of the road exploding looks like. I hope that no one has experienced that, but we all know how it looks like. And there's plenty of companies that do an amazing job at recreating that to the detail, photorealism, and whatever. I think we're a bit different in that sense. We're not focusing on that. We leave them to do that. And I want to just show you very quickly some projects we can rapid fire them that show especially what we do. Of course, with Ready Player One, working with Steven Spielberg, and it was a perfect merging of our passions, film and video games.
Film and Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, and so we can see here that for every single user interface, we design it for each character, so it has its own. The user interface becomes the character, but each one has its own color, its own typography, its own style. But most importantly, is showing us how people can interact with this technology, and these players can do things. So as we move on to the next slides that are animations, you can see here from the previous, you will have Digital Domain and ILM doing these phenomenal creatures or character designs and animations and backgrounds and environments and explosions. But what we focus on is that layer. And I like showing this previous because this previous is what we received in order to kind of place it, and then we just sort of send it for final comps. Sometimes final comps that we do ourselves. But this sort of previous show highlights very specifically what do we do, right? Someone needs to invent how they are going to interact and grab the weapons from where, So if we keep going through the next slides, I think this is a great example on how we're highlighting what we do and what we're experts at. And at the end of the day, we come from being a motion graphics company that started, again, 13 years ago in London. We found our niche, and we tried to be very good at it. But now technologies are allowing us to start having these in our studios and the headsets in different type of products. For some reason, we find ourselves positioned with 13 years of experience of prototyping for mixed reality and augmented reality, because we have been trying to find user experience sort of a paradigms for these films. That again, as we were saying before, every time is different, every time it needs to be fresh designs, and every film will need some different thing, always telling a story. As you can see here, the graphic should always be important to tell and for the audience to quickly understand where we're going, what's this 3D map telling us, what we just found. And I think that is the key differentiator of Territory. I cannot, well, the fact that we're now doing it for real technologies as well, which we're going to see in a minute. This is sort of what we do. Myself, as one of the, as a co-founder here in San Francisco, and like I always say that we're between Hollywood and Silicon Valley in a way, and that's what makes us very different and special in an industry that's highly saturated with underbidding companies that will want to underbid everyone just to take the VFX shot. Even those companies come to us for this specific niche, and that just validates the point that we do what we love doing. And
I love that what you just said about bridging Hollywood and Silicon Valley. There's a project coming up after. There's the next project on your keynote, and then there's one after. And the one after, I want to come back to that thought because it made me think of that.
Yeah.
But first, Space Jam.
Space Jam, and again, it's more of the same. Like someone needs to think how the power up for LeBron James to jump higher needs to look like, and that's what we do. This is the one.
It's so cool. This is my favorite visual from the whole thing. It just looks like candy. I want to eat it.
I think you were quoted as saying that on our Space Jam episode back then.
I think I was. I don't think we even knew that.
That's just kidding.
Yeah, it's fun. It connects us a lot of the video game experience that we have as well when we have to do this for games. In the previous slide, again, how do you imagine someone having a hologram to change the stats of a player, right? Someone needs to be, and Don Cheadle is there, and you have that shot of Don Cheadle doing all of this stuff, and then you have to sort of design with these constraints around it. Sometimes we are able to tell some of these actors and actresses where these graphics will be. But sometimes, like in this case, we are left to what the performance was, and it's even more fun to do it that way when you have the challenge, when you have the restraint, and because what is designing without a challenge really is not that fun. We all know that. You know that better than anyone, right? With the challenge that you put yourselves into. So, yeah.
Speaking of fun, Jason Murphy in the chat is asking, how much of your work do you consider fun stuff versus kind of more boring stuff?
Yeah, and name clients.
No, don't.
Look, here's the thing.
We don't do boring stuff. Everything is fun.
It's true. It's true. We're very grateful that all of the clients and how we position ourselves in this industry are always bringing us stuff that we love and we're really, really passionate about, no matter what the industry comes from. I remember when I moved to San Francisco to start our second office 7 years ago now. I ended up talking with an owner of a company here. I'm not going to name a creative studio. And, he was talking about all of these great contracts that he signed with Salesforce and Meta and Google. And I was like, okay, cool. But then we ended up talking with some of the freelancers that are in the city. And sometimes they were calling us saying, do you have anything? Because I don't want to go do that boring Salesforce video. Nothing against Salesforce, right? But they didn't want to do that. And that day, the first weeks in the city, we realized how quickly you can get into just do corporate work and just do things that, and you might land a massive contract, but then you have a bigger problem as a company, which is that you won't have the people that want to do it. So then how you deliver, and do you end up with a bunch of artists doing things that they don't like? It's not what we are. It's not what we are here to do. We're here to do things that, again, hopefully change future technologies that imagine, that invent different kinds of interactions, thanks to these crazy projects that come to us. And we want to stay within that realm of play for all of the brands that we work for all of the films, for all of the digital perks that we do. And looking around the office the other day, I could not see, we're now working on 9 projects at a time here in the San Francisco office, and none of them is something that no one wants to kind of go on and do. We have projects with Nike, we have projects with Netflix VFX show, we have projects with Magic Leap headsets. We have everything is super exciting. EA games, PlayStation, graphic. It's really, really exciting for everyone, and that's, I think that answers the question. If you put wedding pictures in your portfolio, people will call you for wedding pictures. But if you put things that you want to be doing and that you enjoy doing, you're positioning yourself for people to really understand that if they want that, they have to come to you for that. And it's very important to position yourself doing what you love and what you have fun doing.
You guys just keep talking. I'm just going to go update my website real quick.
No,
it's also. Please go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
I was just about to say it's the director's responsibility also to take a job that could be executed in a straightforward way and find a way to execute it in an unexpected way and in a way to make it, exciting for the client and for the artists and everybody involved in the process. And we've, like Marty said, we put the work out in the world that we want to be doing, and that's attracting people who are interested in what we bring to the table.
I love that.
And now in the chat, Andrew Smith is asking, do you call it FUI, FUI? Like, how do you pronounce it? But I would like to build on that and say, I want from each of you, Ashton, Russ, and Marty, do you think FUI stands for fake UI, future UI, fictional UI, faux UI? Like, each one of you must have a different opinion on what FUI actually stands for.
Which one?
I like that one.
Please, Ashton, go ahead. You first.
I don't know. A future, I guess, or it's such a it's kind of chicken and egg kind of thing. It's like it's as subjective as art itself, you could say.
Excellent non-answer.
Yeah, thank you.
This is why she's the executive.
Yeah.
I always say fictional UI. That's what I go for.
Anytime I do a talk about FUI, I start by defining it by saying, like, you can call it fictional, you can call it fake, you can call it faux. You basically insert your favorite F word, and it probably will do the job.
Well, that's what I've been doing this entire time.
Yeah.
Fun.
Fatal.
Speaking
It's
of
fun
speaking of
UI.
Russ's,
That's exactly it. Fantastic UI. Sure.
Speaking of Russ's presentations, if you scroll up earlier in the chat, the links to Russ's presentations at SIGGRAPH in 2019 and 2022 are in the chat.
Yes, they are. Now, going back to the statement you said, Marty, about Hollywood and Silicon Valley, I love the work you guys did on Swan Song. It looks like it looks I was talking about The Martian, that looked the most. The Martian watching it felt so right for that environment and for that world and that story. This stuff, going through this stuff, this is like art, man. And it just looks like, it looks so practical and so much like the interfaces we're used to now, just pushed, like just three-dimensionalized or pushed to this new place. I thought was really, really smart and cool.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because all of the work that we will see here for Swan Song was done over a year before Apple presented the Vision Pro. So we had no reference on what they were doing, but it was funny to see how similar they were. How the solution and the result ends up being so similar. We wanted to think about a more tactile mixed reality. Solution here, as you said, in the mindset of what this will look like if Google has the capacity to do that tomorrow. And so we started looking a lot about parallax and how we could present different desktop and different functional interfaces for this talent that also was was doing their stuff, and they're always telling a story. They're always part of the shot and the frame, its own character. They have their own shadows, they have their own lighting and whatnot. And the importance here, it was to be modular and just to show what's coming. And I think seeing then the validation of Apple presenting what they presented, it was very fun to see that we got to a similar conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that it feels soft like paper. Like it feels like three-dimensional, but still flat, like these flat cards. This is just very, very, very beautiful, subtle work.
Yeah, you will see some before and afters here. Of course, this is non-existent, but I think we are hinting to the future of retail. We're hitting like points on interaction models that maybe don't exist yet. Later on, we show the future of gaming, which we really love that part because, again, we're gamers territory. Most of us, we play games, and some of us, I myself, used to work at Activision and Nintendo before territory. So how you play with your son in a way that is mixed reality, but it's also involving 3D, all of these new paradigms of interaction. And for that, the fun part is that for those 3 or 4 shots that will last 15 seconds stopped, if you keep going through the next slides, we go through the detail. Oh, there's no more slides in here. I have them if you want.
Yeah, let's see them.
Okay, because I like to show. I know again, going off piece.
Oh, that was our favorite.
If you
part,
apologize again, we're gonna lose our minds. I'm just kidding.
I have some of these in other presentations. So let me just fire these up. All right.
It's interesting while Marty's getting that presentation up that since Swan Song's come out, we've had so many different clients come in really wanting kind of, it's like the X Marvel kind of thing, moving away from that super shiny, thing that you kind of see in all these Marvel projects. People are really liking something that feels super futuristic, but more tangible. Yeah. And like it's paper renders or, a lot of organic kind of materials in it. Even like some movies where you wouldn't expect it. It's really interesting, I think, to see what's going to come down the line in the next couple of years.
So I don't know if you see my screen, but I'm just flicking through what was presented a year and a half after and what we were going for that show. But what I wanted to show you in this is like the detail of designing the characters and all of these different and these things, if you expect this for a game development, of course, but we love 3D design, CGIs, so we go through all of the detail, just even if this is going to show for like 4 seconds, right? And we do all of the animations and everything just to show the idea of what the future of gaming could be, and this is the breakdown of that shot.
It's so great because you took what we're seeing, and you're seeing when we play a game now, we're seeing this real-time rendered, beautiful 3-dimensional textured character, and there's no reason to believe that if we're doing an AR or hologram or whatever, that it would need to be suddenly glowy blue, whatever. It can look like what we see in the game just put into our environment, and I see this and I want it. It gives me the feeling that I felt watching Minority Report, 15 years ago, whenever that was. Like, you see Tom Cruise moving stuff around and you're like, well, I want to edit that way. I'd like that right now. And that's how I feel looking at this.
Yeah.
Minority Report came out 21 years ago, Seth.
Damn it. So old.
Yeah. Other elements of this, the more playful type of characters design and
he's so furry.
I love that. We don't get to see this kind of stuff as much from Territory. I want more.
Yeah, honestly, like, I think
It's the fuzzy episode.
Lots of people might think that we're only doing like this FUI, but I think we evolved a lot, especially thanks to visual effects and 3D and everything that we've done for Ghost in the Shell or Pacific Rim, and like all of those are very, very heavy comps and heavy CGI ways of interacting. But those here are a bit more playful, and I think that's the difference between the fictional UI. This is still fictional interface in a way. Like it's like her, right? Like it has a different type of way of communicating with the human. And I'm not going to
fuzzy UI on the next Marvel movie somehow. I don't care if the director wants it or not. Worley wants it.
I love that shot of him like this is great hair sim, and it's just lit beautifully, and then it's just completely depth of fielded, so it's just a little blue blob is like so what happens all the time. You put all this care and attention, and then nope, depth of field, you can't see it. It's a blurry blue blob.
Now that the X-Men are under their umbrella, maybe we'll get a Beast movie, and Beast can UI. Have
and that's what the F stands for on that.
Furry UIs, yes, yeah. Furry UI.
Yeah. I'm a fan.
I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to make a whole show out of.
I think that's the name of this episode for sure.
Yeah, Seth and I were joking the other day a little bit about how in these fictional universes, like less like Swan Song, but more like Ant-Man, that arguably someone at some point is getting hired by Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer to like build inputs for their computer so they can.
Oh yeah, who are these people hiring and contracting to build their interfaces? There's no way that Hank Pym has the design aesthetic.
What we've learned today is that likely it's whoever was doing graphics kind of like that, like 10 years before within that fictional universe.
Yeah.
So in the Marvel universe, likely like 10 years ago, there was a firm like.
Do you have those discussions ever? Like who did these graphics for this character?
I mean, we've been asked in the past, or we think that maybe we might have influenced a couple of new technologies, but I'm not going to even mention it because it makes us like we're bragging as if it was our credit.
Oh.
But there's definitely influence.
Well, it's wild that we're to that point where the gap between our future imaginings and actual interactive technology are closer than they've been in a while, I would say.
Darby Facento, friend of the show and Marvel FUI designer on some of their television works, says they have a headcanon about this topic, who does the UI for Iron Man and whatnot. But
we don't let Darby talk about that. He gets in trouble on message boards.
I bring up Darby because earlier Darby had a question, a process question for y'all at Territory. Do you find yourselves staying in Illustrator for UI work, or have you started looking into things like Figma for more of a snappy, gritty, modular workflow when you're designing things?
I mean, I'm in love with Illustrator. It's still like our to-go to start all of the design systems. But when we have to design for what I'm going to jump in next, which is more like car displays, like real product, digital product that is not for a spaceship, but is for a car. In this case, we have design systems with Figma because it kind of works better with engineering. So, yeah.
Why don't we just dive into that?
Yeah, so I wanted to just quickly jump on the fact that, of course, we do this for spaceships, but we also do it for real product. And that's been one of the big unlocks for us as a company, especially being so close in here to Silicon Valley, and everything was happening with the electric vehicles. But I'm not going to go through all of this. I mean, it's great work. Don't get me wrong, and we continue to do it. But I want to go to something that, thanks to new technologies, we can do now, and it's things like what we did for Audi. So as you can see in these other screens, the screens are getting very large in some cars, like the Cadillacs that we're doing and whatnot. But with Audi, what we've done was the opposite. They asked us that this will have no screens. So what we created is a prototype that works, and you can come to our office and try it if you want, of augmented reality and mixed reality, spatial design, how we can see overlaid graphics on your car, how we can use gestures to call your car, how we can even be welcomed by the car as you walk in. All of these graphics are now overlaid, and they are connected to the seams of that interior design. We can give you tutorials on how to mount the rack bicycles or change the temperature by just hovering your hand. It's almost like UI on demand when you need it. And you can look at the map, and it's a functional map, and you can filter the map. You can just create a route. So I think we are starting to see now that everything that we were doing for Iron Man 10 years ago and whatnot, we finally have the technology that allows us, and also the clients that want to, push it, that allows us to do these things a little bit more in real time and real life. And even when you have the steering wheel, we can make your car transparent and see what's in front of you or what the wheels are detecting. There's a lot of new UX and user experience paradigms that we need to think about. And it's not anymore something that is for the films, even if it looks for a film. This is an actual prototype that we have been prototyping with Magic Leap 2 AR headset. We've, not only with them, but with other companies as well. We see where this is going now. We believe like the unlocks of the Vision Pro, of course, will continue to push the realms of interaction and how we involve graphics, 2D and 3D in real time in our lives. And I think for us is what I was saying before. We've been prototyping for these things for 13 years, thanks to the films that pushed us to imagine them. So we feel like we're very, very, gratefully and very lucky to be positioned in what's happening now with the evolution of technologies with augmented reality and mixed reality.
Michael Pawlek in the chat says they imagine that you'll be able to disable other cars by giving them the finger now.
I hope not. Oh, Seth, you're muted, I think.
Andrew Smith in the chat also said car UI has traditionally been bad. It's to the point that I have a story about that on the movie that I'm going to post on. Darby Vicento from the chat actually did a couple shots for me in which I needed to see a Bluetooth interface in a minivan. And it was I think I broke Darby's brain because I insisted on it being authentic, which meant I kept asking him to make it uglier. Like he kept making it a pleasant design. And finally I was like, no, Darby, I need this to look terrible. And then somebody, our VFX soup, gave Darby a hard time and took a screenshot of the work he ended up doing and photoshopped it to the top of Darby's website, so it would be at the very top of his I think I'm curious though if you guys have done, I hate to divert us from this beautiful stuff. I'm curious if you guys have had to do any work like that for movie or TV or anything where it had to look so authentic that it looked ugly and it was difficult to do.
I have one actually on the Batman. We were sat, me and our creative director here in London, Sam, were sat with Matt Reeves, the director, for probably 2 days making the news graphics. And then he was like, I want it to be and like New York 1, but from like 2003. I want it to look so bad. Like, and we were like, okay, cool. And he would just show us like YouTube videos, and he's like, can you take that from that and like add that in? And I want it to look grungy and a bit just like playing on a really old TV 20 years ago. So yes, that it's harder to do, to make it look purposefully terrible.
It is. It's really hard to do. And it just hurts. You're like, am I going to break something to where I can't do anything good again after this?
Revert to like After Effects 2 or something.
Yeah.
Throw analog and VHS on everything.
Yeah.
El Baul de Luio, sorry about your pronunciation,
Nailed
says they find this talk very interesting. They hope they can pre-compose the trunk of their car because it's a mess.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
This stuff's beautiful. I wish my car looked like this. It does not.
Also, I should say in the chat, Frigby Chillweather is saying you should employ them. They can make anything look terrible.
Frigby? That's your claim to fame, bud. Yeah, where were we? What?
How much more presentation do we have left? Because I want to make sure we have some time left to actually dive in and make things.
Michael, show some gratitude. Look at the beautiful things we're getting to look at compared to what we normally look at.
That Audi shot is just, it's so pretty.
I've got...
Yeah, I stopped sharing. I don't know if you want to...
Oh, you did? I can't tell whenever I'm...
it freeze frames.
It does a freeze frame.
I know what's that. I know what's coming up. We can wrap with this, I think. I think that's one of the last...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need to get into any work today. I feel like we are
at the point now where
I learned that they super glue iPhones into...
You super glue iPhones into sets and you chop up fruit. And that's the recipe for Territory Studio.
I didn't know I was going to be learning those things today.
This interface is so pretty. Sorry.
Yeah, so I would like to talk about this a little bit because, in the beginning we were saying we're all about technology and whatnot. And I think, one thing is saying, we get inspired by technology and whatnot, or we do things with other technology that already exists, like the headsets. But with these, what we wanted to do, what you see here, there's no VFX or post. It's all tracking.
That's so cool. I didn't realize that.
Okay. There you go. So you can see.
No.
Oh, that's so amazing.
What? The world? What the heck? Okay.
Okay, so let me. Oh, thank you. I was hoping that I get one, because if Russ gets one, I don't get one. I'm gonna be annoyed at myself.
Not only that, you're gonna get the patented content drop as well. We're so proud. All right, talk more about this.
Here's the thing. We've been doing this for a long time. We've been doing graphics for screens and whatnot. And the thing is, like, they got to a point a couple of years ago when we were seeing Mandalorian and everything, how they were using the technology for volumes in virtual production. It got to a point where we said, look, we've been doing this for quite a long time, and you can see it here at the beginning of the video. That's some of the work we did for Prometheus and all that. It's for us to really change and add value to this. Otherwise, we can keep doing what we do, right? And we thought, how about we apply the same virtual production techniques, but then we mix it with real interaction points and these iPads and whatnot. And we have, from the camera lens only, this effect of being 3D and just being like having volume. So all of this is we know that it's going to save so much money for some of these companies that will come to us and rotoscope and track and everything. The thing is, like, it looks way better than if we had to try it. We're moving the camera because we now have the position of the camera means that we can skew these graphics specifically to that point of view. And we ended up patenting that invention, by the way. We are seeing, like, the broadcasters being very excited about how now someone can be presenting, like, the elections results in 3D while the camera is moving, and they still have interaction points. But this was done for the film and TV industry, for the DPs to be able to get their lens very close to it, still get that 3D feel. As you can see here, we're using the same techniques that you will use in a volume, but in a very different way. These are interactive, and this could be scaled to over 200 screens if we wanted. We know the position
I
of the
do
screen.
want.
Michael
This makes me
wants it.
so happy.
So we built everything in a way that is render agnostic. We could do it with Unity. We could do it with Unreal. We can do any design, and we don't need to go into post-production to do any rotoscope because that's all on camera. You can see here. It looks even better than if we were trying to do this in VFX. That's a point here. So some will be saying you shooting your own food because if you do this, you're not going to get the VFX. All of the post-production work, but for us, it's not about money, it is about like pushing a little bit technology and changing a little bit how we can do things better for a better outcome, especially because we're so in love with productions, what the camera can depict, the interactions, and you can see here how it works. So we're very happy to be doing this, and let me add that we are now doing it without a camera. We're now doing this for unipersonal experiences, tracking your head and eyes, and you get the exact same effect for other applications that we cannot mention just yet.
You're hired. Wait, so tracking your head and eyes,
so
does that mean
cool.
the DP is like keeping his face visible while moving? No, I'm just kidding.
Do you mean like I'm just picturing like museum displays? Oh, I'm thinking about so many different ways you could do stuff with this.
And it reminds me of the thing in the shot in Ghost Protocol where they did the hallway.
That's what we're all thinking of, actually.
Monitor the projector, come back and forth between the two guys. It's so cool. I didn't mean to reduce this incredible technology down to a Mission Impossible gag, but that's kind of a compliment. This is incredible.
Yeah.
I could watch this video all day.
And we will. Join us for the next 24 hours as we watch that territory thing on a loop. So look, guys, we have 29 minutes. And Hashi and I had an idea that I'm going to let Hashi elaborate on if we got time. I think we got time.
I think we got, yeah. So, well, first of all, holy cow, that was so much cool stuff. Marty, thank you so much for bringing in that extra material. That is some stuff that I did not think that I was going to see along with all of this, which is really, really cool. So what I was hoping to do was just sort of like take us back to like the beginning of a project or something like that. Like try to start with something very low stakes. It kind of doesn't matter. That's sort of what we do on the show. Just to start from the very ground up with a, let me see, I should probably share my screen if I can get this going here. I don't know what I'm doing. What have I done, Seth?
For the next 30 minutes, we're opening Hashi's After Effects project file.
I just want to find what was the original file I had? Here we are. All right, and I'm finally sharing my screen. So one vehicle that has been around for a long time that we're all probably familiar with, I feel like it has not changed a whole lot with the times. I mean, it's got a slightly futuristic design. if we wanted to like talk about it, like this is truly
the least
unlike
aerodynamic design I could think of, probably.
It's horribly. I feel like this would be horribly inefficient in a car incident involving.
You'd fly away.
You would. So, one kind of interesting thing that I like in general is the world of toys and how they're in a way this weird encapsulation of what we think of objects in our world. So like to a kid like who wants to have a car, like this is what we all agreed. Like that's the most accessible vehicle.
This is the universal car.
This is the car. And not only that, it comes with these lovely decals that look like this, which you can order extras of if
so happy
they get peeled off of your copy or whatever. And that made me think about how like the interesting stickers that we put into these are also a weird graphic reduction of something that exists in real life, which is, like a physical fuel gauge, which is less and less popular now.
And also,
so
speaking of ugly design as well.
Yeah. So I thought that like with all of us here, we could maybe start from the ground up of imagining, like there are a couple of different ways we could go about it. Like first of all, the design of this car, which is pretty flawless. Like it's very timeless in its own way. but also has some, interesting reductions that are not really compatible with like what a car today looks like, with what the graphics look like in it today. And imagining this were something that you were tasked with doing, like redesigning, like reinvigorating the Little Tikes car, whatever this is called, the Little Tikes orange car thing. Like, where would we start this conversation?
It'd be so funny if you guys just went, no thanks.
Like, pass.
That was the show.
Well, it certainly is as we're seeing a lot of electric cars, this is kind of the evolution of that idea, right? Like, it doesn't get much more green than
in a car that doesn't turn
toddler energy.
In a Flintstones car.
That's a good point. Yeah, like what even is the fuel of this?
Hashi, did you model this yourself, by the way?
I did not model this myself, and I need to make sure to give credit. This is if you go to Sketchfab, this is Coupe by Nate.
Way to go, Nate!
Sounds like an amazing
fragrance,
like a fragrance. This is the Coupe by Nate, so you'll find it. Not if you're looking for a Little Tikes car, but if you're looking for a Coupe by Nate.
Well, if it were a sedan by Nate, it would have 4 doors.
So we kind of want to see what you do with this. So where do you start?
I think honestly, you start on when you go to the decals, right? What I will do is like, you see these 2 dials. Instead of seeing like the circles inside of that shape, I would use that curvature of that shape to give you like that meter, right? Like you will export something that kind of follows the shape of the form and form of the function, and just then you start thinking how you can play with that challenge, how you can play with that restriction of that shape, and how you can just celebrate the shape of that decal instead of putting a circle inside of it. That's where I will start, honestly. If I had to start,
I like that. Let's see if there's also this technique which I could do. It's the Control I button. There we go.
Whoa.
Look at that. And then,
never heard of that.
Control I, and then maybe just
you just
here we go.
Content aware fill out that gauge.
There we go. So
I'm over here looking up Little Tikes font.
Pressure. We need to scrub our search histories after whatever episode we do.
I think I would be looking at maybe changing some of the iconography and maybe some of the units of measurement here. Instead of a gas gauge, maybe we're looking at like a stomach icon, since we're dealing with like
that's a good point.
Power.
That is where
right?
the
juice.
Yeah, like after lunch, the juice box.
That's a juice box.
Yeah. Box.
Yep.
Justin Leduc from the chat does say that this car runs on Sunny D, which is basically high fructose corn syrup. So I guess ethanol.
It's not good for the car.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Also, I'm a little curious about the units of measurement for the speedometer, since we don't have any definition there. Is this
point. These are some scary topics.
Is that kid going 50 miles an hour?
I mean,
is it
or
like
kilometers, like either way.
Steps a minute, or like what's the? They've also gone a really long distance, 188,000 miles. That's a really long way for a toddler.
It's a lot of juice.
That kid has very low resale value now.
Hell, like as we all know, like as soon as the minute they're out of the womb, a child depreciates in.
That's it. I don't know if this car was kept in California, it might be okay. You might be able to resell it all right. Less rust.
I like that. So I do love the general note of getting rid of you got a circle inside another shape instead of being informed by the other shape. That's lovely.
Yeah,
which,
I think
I can start mocking up, but also I'm an amateur. Let's see.
I was also like saying I'm going to try to quickly share these. I don't know if
ooh.
But when you start finding the design here of all of that, one of the things that we really love is just to start playing with Pathfinder or other
that's
elements.
cool.
And you can use, I'm going to do a very bad example, but if I do something like this, where you have and again, you have to do this properly. But where you
Not
have
on the show, you don't.
no, I know. But imagine that you have something like this. I don't know, just like a random graphic that you say this is good enough. One of the things I like is just grab that, drop it in the pattern, in the brushes, have it as a pattern brush. Click OK, and then what I do is I'll drop it in one of these circles to start messing around.
I didn't know you could do that.
And then you can just like move things around here just to kind of get to something. You can space them more, and then you can even like apply this to the trucks and whatnot. But the point here is to start getting some shape here, and you will want to start doing things like that are Pathfinder tricks, right? Like, which I love, which is you start creating with these shapes by combining them. But you will of course get rid of the half of it, and maybe something like this. This is where I will start, just like with the basic shapes that this indentation here gives you, to start planning for this new shape that then you can just start connecting to places and whatnot. Again, I'm very bad at this in terms of.
No, but this is
so good.
these are the fundamentals we wanted to make sure we mentioned as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, so I think the creating brush thing is very fun. It's very fun because even if you say, okay, this is crap and whatnot, you could just, maybe you like this shape and you just drop this into the pattern brush.
Hey, just so you know, we're only seeing your main Illustrator interface. All those palettes and stuff on the side are invisible to us.
Okay, sorry. Well, let me just quickly go back to that because I think the pattern brush. How do I do share?
It's probably because you share the Illustrator window and not just your whole screen, which is probably wise. But
So what I'll do is I'm going to go to this view to make sure no bank account information's on your screen if you want to switch it over.
I don't have any of that.
Okay.
And while the switch is happening, I should say to those of you in the chat who might be thinking, hey, I'm hearing chat questions that I don't see in my chat. That is because we are having this streamed on multiple channels at once. We're on the Maxon Training Team channel, the Maxon channel, Red Giant YouTube channel, and Twitch and other places.
The fun stuff's at Red Giant. I think Michael just froze.
I didn't know if that was me or Michael.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if that was me or not.
We'll miss you, Michael.
And we'll chat.
There he is. He's back.
Nope, sorry. I'm back. I blame Cloudflare Warp.
We all blame. Okay, nope. That's internal.
You can see my entire screen now, right?
Yes, we can.
So when I drop these or whatever I want to this box here, which is my brushes, I get the option to kind of create a pattern brush. And this pattern brush, I need to create, doesn't work with type, so you need to expand the type into an object fill and whatnot. But when I drop it, let's try again. I go to pattern brush, I'll click OK, and in here, if I wanted to add this to this pattern brush, instead I double click. Now I have the ability to kind of make it smaller, or having fixed or adding pressures, which is very interesting. And these are little tricks that we use sometimes for meters and things like that. And so what I was trying to do here is just, okay, maybe let's find where that circle starts. Let's start expanding that circle by growing it. And maybe this and then could be where you have your velocity and you will be mixing. Anyway, I quite like this. And Pathfinder, what I was saying before, is sort of a very interesting way to combine shapes. So if I want to combine this shape with this shape, I have them both selected. I can, subtract it or I can add it. And that starts adding, a lot of fun to the creative process. That's that. I was saying,
It
wasn't really
makes so much
prepared
sense
for that.
now, retroactively looking at you guys' work and seeing, and just seeing like that thought process, and now it's making so much more sense how shapes interacting with each other, where they are in layout in terms of ratio. Yeah, I'm saying words that I don't even know how they connect. It just in my brain they make sense. They're making more sense now.
Do you then take these splines you make in Illustrator into After Effects or Cinema 4D or both?
Yes. We usually create all of our graphics in a vector, non-destructible way because, again, as we were talking before, sometimes we need to go very big with one screen and other times we need to go small. I really like the recolor. So when you have an entire palette of like library of something you created and you want to recolor the whole thing, I really like doing that. But yeah, we export vectors that we need to use with extrusions and Cinema 4D or any other software like After Effects for the animations and whatnot. That's usually the pipeline for like these more 2D graphics.
Do you have like an internal nomenclature that you've come up with for like what you consider? I love that you were talking about how like if you're using fonts, you use like 3 different sizes instead of anything in between. Do you have terms that you like? Your most simplified version of this design like pares down to basically like just the shape of the gauge and the needle, and like that's really all you need. But then you have secondary and tertiary like things that help out. Do you just sort of do them naturally, or is there any language that you had to develop between each other to say like this has too much secondary components, whatever? I don't know what I'm asking.
I mean, I can go back to the rules. If you set rules, then everything makes sense. But as always, the rules are there to be broken, right? And in the same way that a pilot will not land and go around if the winds are not good. Like sometimes you can have a get out of the way for a specific graphic that really needs that. I don't know, Russ, what do you think? I mean, Russ here is like one of the creative directors that really is doing this all the time. And
yeah, I don't know that there's a specific nomenclature that we've developed. There's, we reference a lot of things outside of our space pretty often in order to kind of communicate that. So, as a director, it's important to be able to tell the people who you're working with what's in your head, and sometimes you can't necessarily show that. So it's about kind of referencing things maybe outside of that world or outside of the things that had previously been done. And thinking about ways to combine those things together. I have in the past had, nomenclatures that develop. I've had a bunch of, very simple early days in my career, very simple, moves that we would do over like still images to make them feel kind of exciting. And, names like the lazy helicopter sort of evolved out of that. But this stuff, like all of our projects end up being so different and kind of bespoke in a lot of ways that it's kind of difficult to come up with a specific nomenclature that's not tied directly to that project, right?
That's cool.
I wanted to share these because there's not so much of a nomenclature, but so these are the designs that I did for the first Ironmans. And the nice thing is to see that everything is sort of following a grid, and that this grid is not shown, but this grid and all of these elements will be aligned to the grid. I think this is important sometimes, just to kind of establish things that even the little buttons, as you can see here, will follow this grid, and will follow like the right, even the little icons will only utilize one square of this grid. And when you start mixing them all together in widgets like these, then everything kind of feels better and matches it all. And since we are here, I wanted to show you that recolor, because if you select everything and all of a sudden you want to change, all of your After Effects are connected to this file. All of the animations for all of the screens are connected to what we could call a master file. And if you go to recolor, which I'm going to just quickly type here because I don't know where they, So if you go to recolor artwork, so edit colors, recolor artwork, you could completely change the whole thing. Oh, come on. Here it is. It's hidden. It's hidden here. But you could change the whole thing by by moving all of these, and then the whole UI will change now to the whole.
Wow, that's so cool.
Why
best
don't
part-
we know this, Hashi?
Oh my
It-
gosh.
It will.
We're not designers. I don't know how
It
to.
will contain like all of the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, right? Like it's not gonna break everything. And when you save that file, all of your animations inside of After Effects, then it will adapt and be updated with the right color. A little trick for someone who might be tired of their color after working on this for weeks and wants to edit, go to edit colors. You can do it with a preset. You have, Adobe has some libraries that you can bring here. If you like other things, you can go super beige.
Yeah, there's our
still,
Dune stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Dune
Then
palette.
even yeah. So yeah, a little trick here as well that I like to share sometimes with Illustrator designers and whatnot. That's that.
That's so cool.
So useful. That's crazy useful. Question from the chat I just saw. Sorry, Michael, I'm stepping on you.
I was just about to say that.
Who inspires you guys? I'd love to hear from each of you. Like if you have, it can be like a seminal thing. It can be a current inspiration thing, but whose work inspires you these days or ever? No one. Yourselves.
No, it's so much.
I'm inspired
There's so
by the
much.
trees and the sun and the birds.
This is a lot, honestly. I think there's a lot of great artists out there outside of design with computers that are doing phenomenal work, sculptures and architects. I'm very highly inspired by architecture, not because I wanted to be an architecture. I'm a dropout, went to multimedia design instead. But I think for me, the technology advancements most recently have been inspiring what I would like to do. All of the stuff that we're seeing with meshing nerves, with Neuralangelo, all of the Gaussian splatting, all that stuff, it's just happening so fast that it's very inspiring. And you start thinking what you can do with it, and that to me is inspiration, right? When you start thinking what you will do with it, how you could play with that new concept. So technology is definitely a source of inspiration and innovation in that aspect. But as I was saying before, looking outside of what we do is to me one of the best ways to get inspired. Like undersea creatures, I always go to nature. So being outside, not looking at screens, just being with other people, sweating, like these things are things that really we're getting lost a little bit in these digital platforms very quick.
I've never heard of these activities. I don't know what you're speaking of.
To go back to the design, go back to the screen, you need to bring something from different realms that are not involving screens and softwares. So I think it's connected to inspiration in a way, and it's very important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, for me, I was a child of the 80s, not to date myself too much, but, I grew up with Star Wars and Back to the Future. And, for me, Ron Cobb specifically, he was the he was the guy behind all of the graphic design and set design and everything for Alien, the original Alien, and then Aliens to follow. His work, like the graphic design that he did for like all of the little buttons and everything in the ship, and the way that the screens look and all of that comes up. Like he put so much like thought and intention and detail into every single little button, even if it's like blurry on the edge of the screen for 12 frames in a shot. Like it didn't matter. Like he was investing that thought and energy into that element, which I always found really, really fascinating. It just built that world so effectively. Like it just looked amazing. But I also love like old, like Bauhaus era graphic design. I love going back and looking at some of the Swiss designers and German designers and, Russian constructivism and stuff. Like I love that aesthetic just in general, and, going to an art gallery, or like Marty said, just getting out and being outside and experiencing things in the real world that people have done outside of my screens, really important part of the creative process and getting inspired.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to echo what both Marty and Russ said. I mean, a lot of me and, quite a few people I work with here in London, we've been spending a lot of time kind of looking backwards and getting inspired, from old microfiche that you get in libraries and like all that kind of the more tangible kind of all the textures that come with it, say on like a DV cam and things like that aren't as formulaic as some of the things can be recently. And exactly like Russ was saying, such an important part of the creative process is actually going out and living life and being bored and allowing yourself the space for that. And so that's kind of such an important aspect of it, that's, going out and touching grass, as the kids say.
I feel like that. Yeah.
That.
Go ahead, Seth.
Sorry, Hash, go for it.
No, I mean, I just think that the whole idea of touching grass, getting bored, looking back at like older references before technologies and design waves moved as quickly as they did. There was so much intentionality that had to go with design that I feel like you all have encapsulated that really well today. Just showing that like you're not throwing bits and bobs, onto the screen to fill up space. Like you're starting from the ground up of like, what would it do? How would it work? And it really came across in so many different ways. It was really cool to see like how that could serve a military aesthetic or a quantum realm aesthetic, starting with those same principles.
Absolutely.
And that's really, really cool.
Now, if after our audience has finished touching grass and living life and being inspired, if they were a working motion designer and wanted to move into FUI work, how would you recommend them move in that direction? Personal projects, books, tutorials, courses? They said Nick Smith says they're asking for a friend, but the question is in the chat. How would one go from being a regular old, boring, quote unquote, motion graphics artist into being a cool, slick FUI person like you?
Personal projects would probably be my first recommendation. That gives you the most freedom and flexibility to do the kinds of work that you want to do. And, if you are doing the kinds of work, you're showing design studios the kinds of things that get you excited and inspired. The more you do that, somebody's going to take notice of that and bring you in to do that kind of thing. We're always on the lookout for new talent and people that are excited. And one of the things that I look for is, what are those personal projects, the things you do for fun? What gets you excited? Just show that to the world.
And if you do that, don't go to Envato and download a FUI kit, because that's going to defeat the entire purpose, right? I think if you do that, just start with that square, start with that empty grid, and start creating something that speaks the language that you wanna. It's gonna be so different when you feel that it's yours. You will care more about it. So we see a lot of that, or a lot of people, recreating other people's work is not a bad thing to get started, but what's gonna make you enjoy the process is create something that is yours, that you start from scratch, that doesn't start from a template or a pack of icons. Every single detail counts, and I think if you want to be doing this type of work, you gotta love it, because it's not easy to be seeing lines and dots every freaking day and person. So enjoy the process. Make sure that that's what you really want. I think I say a lot these days that sometimes we want to want something. I would love to be good at synthesizers. I want to be good at synthesizers, but I know that I don't really want it. Otherwise, I will really dedicate a lot of time to it. So I know that we're dedicating time to this because that's really what ticks us. So do it, try it, and if it's not for you, it's okay. There are shit tons of other ways to be creative and do things in motion graphics and work in these films, right? I think it goes deeper than just saying, I want to start, try it. Might not be for you. If you love it, you definitely, it's going to show.
I agree with that.
Give yourself
There's
a project
saying.
brief.
Oh, go ahead, Russ.
Oh, I was going to say, give yourself a project brief. When you sit down at your computer, the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want. But when you put guardrails on and you focus your energy by giving yourself a brief, then that helps guide your process. It gives you something to check yourself against, and it gives you a story to tell. And that's gonna show through in the final product.
I love that.
I mean, I think our example from, this last quarter of this episode is like, here's the framework that you can design in on this car. Let's make a new interface, but in these parameters is a great way to start. I'm not saying you should go do a Play Tools, whatever it is, car, but it's a good way to just say, here's a project to make. Like give your like he was saying, guardrails. It's because that's what clients are going to give you. So
guardrails,
make yourself have them.
To Marty's point, talking about copying other artists, we've talked about this on the show a million times, and we preach this all the time on the show that it's okay to copy other artists when you are actively engaging with it in a way to where you are looking for your shortcomings and where you're falling short of what the artist did or differing from what the artist did, and then leaning into those things and using those as entryways to exploration and finding your own voice, which I think we've spoken millions of times on the show, but can't be spoken enough. Ashton, what about you?
I mean, I agree to all of the above. Yes to all of the above. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things. It feels like such a niche thing to get into, and it feels more difficult, than I think that people realize it is. And it is about being passionate. And like you said, I mean, kind of like what Russ was saying, be your own client as annoying as that sounds, and kind of setting yourself really strict, if I want to get something out for this and this, kind of real life scenarios that might happen, and just trying out a mix of different things, like you were saying with, being inspired by, okay, I want to make something like that was in Ant-Man, but in this style, and seeing what comes out of it, and, allowing that space to play a little bit. And that's when the best work will come out.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for coming on our show. Please come on again. And I think someone in the chat was saying, can they come back and just build a FUI from scratch, from the ground up? And I absolutely agree with that question, and we should have you back sometime. But thank you for coming today and showing us all this amazing stuff. We love your work.
Really incredible stuff. And yeah, just seeing the onset applications was such a treat, because I really consider that. I am such a do it in post person that wasn't even expecting that.
Absolutely.
No, we appreciate it, and I want to send it back to you guys. Having fun doing these things is extremely important, and what you guys are doing and the way that everything you're doing for the community, which is extremely important. It goes a long way. A lot of people in our 5 offices now, we know that they watch your shows, and we do as well, right?
They have programs you can use to block that on their computers. You can police that.
That Mission Impossible bike episode probably made me laugh very loud in the middle of the office. But I think it's all about that. It's just like about putting smiles in our faces and mixing the passion that we all have, and adding that layer of fun and expertise, and bringing a lot of people that inspire us as well. So thanks for having us. I think it goes without saying that it's a pleasure to be here, but thanks for what you're doing every day. It's very important, and we appreciate it.
Oh, Marty, we're blushing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we say this to our favorite guests, and only our favorites, but we say it publicly, so it's going to be clear who we like and don't. But you have the link to literally schedule yourselves on our show whenever you want. That's an open invitation, so you can do it without warning. You're welcome anytime. Thank you, guys. Michael, before we go, I believe you had some things to make Business Daddy happy, right? What's going on?
Not just Business Daddy, but also a lot of artists out there. It's just some quick little updates from the Maxon world. If you missed it, obviously there's new updates to some of the tools out. Cinema 4D got faster again just last week. But
it keeps doing that.
I know, it's crazy. Cinema 4D 2024.1 just came out, and it makes things with us effectors faster. But also, the educational student faculty program is back in action. The link is in the chat. If you are a student at a university or faculty and you qualify for this, you can get all of the Max on One goodies for an extremely low price. You just can't use it for commercial projects. But hey, it's back up in action. It's working now. Thank heavens. Also, make sure you follow Red Giant on social media channels, Red Giant News on Facebook or on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads, and Red Giant Software on Facebook, because this Monday we're going to be tweeting out, posting out, threading out a link to a really cool template for spooky season for giving yourself crazy, spooky, weird eyes. What? And speaking of, it's really cool. Little tutorial, free project file. Full of crazy spooky eyes. And speaking of spooky things, last week on VFX and Chill, Hashi had a really cool spooky episode where he made bloody text and smoky faces and all kinds of cool spooky season
alone for
VFX.
One show, and you can't help
so check out, that link is also in the chat when this episode is over here in a minute or two. Check out Hashi's spooky one from last week if you missed it. Skip ahead a bit because we had some technical difficulties at the beginning.
Yeah, just ignore it.
Then Hashi starts making some crazy spooky things.
Let's move along.
Spooky. Hey, everyone. Thank you again for watching. Territory, thank you for being here. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Absolutely cool. Such a pleasure, Al. Yeah.